Amos Hochstein is Senior Advisor of Energy Security at the Department of State and joins us today. The thing here, Amos, every time around is whip inflation now. And every president has a different path, like Jerry Ford, to whip inflation now. And your reading of history is the same as mine. This is a tough task. What is the first order of business for Joe Biden?
Well, I think, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me on the show. As you said before, energy security is a critical issue, and I think the president took strong steps yesterday to address the fallout in the energy markets as a direct result of the Ukraine war and the invasion, the unjust invasion and brutal war that Putin is waging in Ukraine, and that has consequences, as the president said yesterday, here at home, with rising costs of energy, rising costs of oil, which of course translates, as you said, into rising costs of gasoline for Americans. So President Biden took a strong step yesterday, announcing the largest SPR release, the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, 1 million barrels a day for the next 6 months. And that we've already seen prices come down as a result of that announcement. That's going to have a major impact in the oil markets and the energy markets at large.
Yeah, okay. But Amos, what's important here, and this is pizza security. John, this filters down into every product, including a slice of pizza at Famiglia in New York. It is up, up, up.
You're very delicate about the slice of pizza in New York, Tom.
I think it's as important as a gallon of gas.
I agree it's important. There's another measure, Amos, that you announced yesterday. You called on Congress to do something, to make companies pay fees on wells from their leases that they haven't used in years, and on acres of public lands that they are hoarding without producing. That's from the statement from the White House released yesterday. The administration keeps talking about these 9,000 leases. Amos, I don't think if you wrote this, you would have written that. Because if I asked you the following question, I want a direct answer to a direct question. Of those 9,000 leases, how many of those sit on productive land?
So I will answer you a direct answer, but let me just say on slice of pizza price, I agree. The prices are going up everywhere. Part of that is as a result of these skyrocketing energy prices, where we're not a farm-to-table economy. We're a farm-to-truck-to-table. So everything that we consume has to go on, has resulted in a gallon of gasoline or a gallon of diesel, trucks coming, crisscrossing the country for delivering, whether it's ingredients for pizza or if it's for other commodities. So there's a direct result, and that's why it's not just the gallon of gasoline is not a political issue. This is a real economic issue that we need to address, and that is a result of a foreign war that we have to be cognizant of. As far as the leases, look, these are on public lands, and your point is right. If some of these leases are on non-productive acreage, then the companies that are holding these leases for several years sometimes and are not doing any seismic, not doing the kind of work that needs to be done on that acreage because they think it's non-productive, then you have two choices. Either you can return the lease or give it up, or you can simply pay the higher fees because you want to hold on to that lease for a little longer so that you can develop it later. And I think that is, I would have written that.
But Amos, do you know why they might want to sit on it and develop it later? It could be on third-rate land that requires a higher crude price. You know how this works. The way this is being framed by the administration is that these land leases are being hoarded, that we're sitting on productive land and it's not being produced because these companies are greedy. I mean, I'll read the line out from the president. His words: companies have an obligation that goes beyond just the shareholders to their customers, their communities and their country. No American company should take advantage of a pandemic or Putin to enrich themselves at the expense of American families. What evidence is there that they're hoarding those leases? Wait, I'll finish, then you can go and I'll give you all the time you need. What evidence is there that they're hoarding those leases because they're being greedy to profit from what's happening in Ukraine?
So let's disaggregate. There are a number of issues here. And the president actually recognized the companies, the oil companies, that are responding to this price environment, that are responding to this world supply shortage that we're in, and have announced extraordinary increases in CapEx and in reinvestment in the United States in bringing on additional production. And he's recognized them and said that is progress, and he praised them for doing that. But there are other companies, and you know that, Jonathan, that are saying, look, I have the ability to increase production with prices when prices were at 120 and 130 just a week ago, and said, I'm not going to do it. And he called out some of those who've said, even at $200 or $300 a barrel, I'm not going to increase production because a variety of reasons. And some of them are saying, the funds that back me or that own are my shareholders or my holders of my debt are saying, don't do that. Give us increased dividends during this time. There is no well that is not profitable at 120, at 130. And if you're making a decision at prolonged period of time of above $85, which we've now been in for a few months, that you can't make more investment to bring on production, then I think the president is 100% right to call them out, especially when other companies are saying, no, this is exactly the kind of environment that we are going to increase production. And look, we did two things. One, the president announced that we're going to release 1 million barrels a day in order to increase the certainty of liquidity in the energy markets and to make sure there's enough oil on the market to support the U.S. economy as well as the global economy. Number two, he has said that we're going to replenish the reserve at a time when we finish dispersing and releasing the oil and when prices come down. So we're going to sell the oil now at high prices, buy it back later. That gives incentive to the oil companies to say, look, I know that even though the U.S. is going to release these reserves, I'm going to have a buyer in the U.S. government later on. So it continues that incentive to increase production. And I think that this is what we needed. We needed to put something into the system where we can bridge. The oil companies have said, look at Exxon and Chevron, Conoco, Oxy, have said they're going to increase production. We're going to increase 900,000 to 1 million barrels a day this year. And that means, but it's only going to come on in the middle of the third quarter to the end of the year. So we have a gap between now and that period of time. So what the president did yesterday, this historic move, is to say, the U.S. government's going to fill that gap between now and then.
Yeah.
And put that same 1 million barrels a day of production that we're hoping to get that we're going to get at the end of the year, and put that out now, so that we're not replacing the private sector, we're incentivizing it and letting the American consumer benefit from lower prices between now and then.
The likes of Goldman Sachs disagree. Jeff Curry says this: the US policy use of an SPR release, a potential deal with Iran, extreme price volatility, and the growing risk of a recession next year are all exacerbating the uncertainty faced by producers, reducing their incentive to invest more. Amos, the reason I bring this stuff up is that I want to avoid this really kind of simplistic conversation that something untoward is happening in the oil patch, when you know that what happens in the oil industry is incredibly complex. Now, you've said something else over the last few years as well, over the last 12 months. I'll bring up another thing. This was November 17th. President Biden urged the FTC Commission chair to investigate oil and gas companies' retail prices, blaming industry leaders as gas prices continue to soar. It's become this talking point that oil majors are hoarding these leases, even though you admit we don't know what's on that acreage. We don't know what's on that acreage. Then there's this other talking point that somehow these companies are price gouging, and in the president's words, taking advantage of a pandemic or Putin to enrich themselves at the expense of American families. I'm just asking, what evidence is there of that? You wanted to start this probe. What have you found? What evidence is there? What companies are price gouging right now? And if you can identify them and name them, what are you doing about it?
Well, first, I think, as we said yesterday, I don't believe, first of all, to Mr. Curry's comments, I and my colleagues in the U.S. government, we've been in close contact with the energy industry. And most companies have actually said that they believe what we did yesterday was exactly the right thing to do. And that they feel that it has an incentive because it is for 6 months before their production comes online. And because we're going to spend the next couple of years replenishing the reserve, that means that they are incentivized to continue to spend the capex that they've announced to increase production. So with respect to Goldman Sachs, and I take a lot of issue with some of the other things that he said in that report.
Well, I've no doubt you do. But another question you'd be asked as well, Amos, is who would make a decision like this to boost capex on front month Brent futures? Who would do that? WTI futures front month. Who would do that? You know what the rest of the curve looks like. Why would they make a decision based on where the front month is?
Well, Donnie, I got to tell you, they are making that decision. They have announced that they're going to, several of the majors who are the largest holders and drillers in the Permian and in other shale basins have said that they are increasing capex. I think Exxon said 25%. They're going to increase production. Total U.S. production is going to grow by about 10% by that 900,000 to 1 million barrels. It's just that these things don't happen overnight. You know that the decision to spend money, billions of dollars to bring up production, doesn't mean production comes on the next day. But I want to address the point that you said, because I think the president was very clear. We're not taking a broad swipe of the whole industry. He said that he wanted to acknowledge the fact that part of the industry has done exactly what it needs to do, and to see high oil prices, incentivizing them to bring about more production. Other companies, and we can't ignore this, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Some companies have said, and the quote that he used in his speech, that even at $200 a barrel, I will not increase production because of so-called fiscal discipline. That is not, I'm not making that up.
No, I know you're not. Amos, and to be fair to you, just let me jump in. To be fair to you, that was a comment on this network. I heard it. I talked about it. I repeated it. It's something I've said before. Another thing I've highlighted as well was a Wall Street Journal report that came out in the last few weeks. The administration is trying to make a call to the Saudis in Riyadh, trying to arrange a call with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and they won't take the call. Now, I spoke to a member of OPEC, and you can respond to that in a moment. I spoke to a member of OPEC this week, and I thought it was utterly embarrassing for them that they had a meeting earlier this month that lasted 13 minutes, and one just yesterday that was at 1 minute shorter. Now, I wonder if it's more embarrassing for us that they're laughing in our faces and doing this. Now, you speak to the Saudis. Talk to me about it. A, is that false? Did the administration try and arrange a call with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the President of the United States? And B, why are their meetings lasting 13 minutes if we're in a massive energy crisis?
So, one, there was a call that was going to be arranged between the president and King Salman, and that call did take place. Those reports, I'm seeing constantly reports of Saudis snubbing the U.S., or I think there's an interest in certain quarters to bring about this kind of narrative that is completely false. I've been to Saudi Arabia on a number of occasions over the last several weeks, or a couple of months. On a couple of occasions, I was told what the Saudis told me on the front pages of a U.S. newspaper about 3 hours before the meeting started. And I showed the Saudis the headline so that we can jointly comment about the hyperbole of the press on this. So I would really relax. I don't think there is the relationship between the United States and Saudi is strategic. We have a lot of issues that we need to work on together. There are complexities in that relationship that we are working on. We have a lot of issues that are of common interest, fighting terrorism, that Saudi has had to suffer through over the last several weeks, specifically from the Houthis. We have a lot of strategic interests elsewhere in the region, and as well on energy. And I'll tell you that we're having very good discussions there. The press and reality on this one are really far apart. On OPEC, look, I was asked before the OPEC meeting if we had a message to OPEC, and my answer was, I have no message for OPEC. These are folks that know the industry, they know the market, they know the supply and demand. I must have a difference of opinion. We believe that, not just believe, but I can see the physical evidence that the market is short about 2 million barrels a day, if not more, from Russian supplies into the global market. That is clear to me. We can see that. Obviously, some perhaps in OPEC don't see the shortage of supply, but I can understand that it's a complex issue for them with the OPEC versus OPEC plus. I think that's they're going to have to take some time, and perhaps if you're not going to discuss the issues very seriously, perhaps 11 or 12 minutes is all you need. But at the end of the day, they've done what they needed to do, and they've increased production announced that they're going to continue the increases of production. We don't think that's right. The president is not asking other people to do the work that we should do. He took action yesterday by himself on behalf of the U.S. government for the American public of releasing 1 million barrels a day. I believe, by the way, Jonathan, that we're going to have additional capacity coming online from our allies. And the president coordinated this release, as he has all other measures against President Putin, with our allies when he was in meetings at the G7 and the NATO summit last week. He's discussed it with leaders even earlier this week. I've had conversation with my counterparts, and there's a meeting that is going on right now of the IEA, the International Energy Agency, to look at additional releases from the international market. So we won't just have oil coming on the market in the United States, but rather have oil coming online into the market in Asia and as well as Europe over the next several months.